Hey there! I'm your host Juhi, and welcome to a brand new episode of Night Files. Today we're going to be looking at a medical mystery, something that will actually put to use my 2 years of STEM classes and hospital volunteering, because it would be a shame if all that suffering was for nothing. It's a case of a woman whose death baffled those treating her and whose illness ended up being more contagious than should have been expected. It's the case of Gloria Ramirez, also known as the Toxic Woman. February 19, 1994. At around 8:15 p.m., paramedics wheeled a young woman into the emergency room of Riverside General Hospital in California. They parked her in a small curtained space marked Trauma Room 1. The 31-year-old woman was awake, but she responded to questions with only brief utterances. Her breaths were shallow and rapid. She was suffering from severe heart palpitations and seemed very confused. Those treating her were made aware that she had late-stage cervical cancer, and given her symptoms, the case did not look good. This patient was named Gloria Ramirez. The medical staff injected Ramirez with a host of fast-acting drugs such as Valium and Ativan to sedate her. She wasn't getting better. At the moment when staff tried to defibrillate her heart, they noticed a strange oily sheen covering Ramirez's body, as well as an unusual odor emanating from her mouth described as both fruity and garlicky. Nurse Susan Kane attempted to draw blood from Ramirez's arm and noticed an ammonia-like smell coming from the tube. Julie Gorchinsky, a medical resident on staff that night, also noticed unusual manila-colored particles floating in the blood. None of this echoed standard symptoms for someone suffering from cervical cancer. It was in these moments that some staff members treating Ramirez began to feel nauseated and passed out. After 3 people fainted, the night quickly turned surreal, as the staff was ordered to evacuate all emergency department patients to the parking lot. A skeleton crew stayed behind to help Ramirez to no avail. At 8:50 p.m., after 45 minutes of CPR and defibrillation, Ramirez was pronounced dead. Outside in the parking lot, hospital staff members continued to experience the effects of some mystery ailment. They reported experiencing tremors and apnea, as well as a burning sensation on their faces. Overall, 23 people became ill and 5 were hospitalized. In one of the more severe cases, Gorchinsky spent 2 weeks in intensive care, where in addition to apnea, she suffered from hepatitis, pancreatitis, and a vascular necrosis, a condition in which bone tissue is starved of blood and begins to die. The vascular necrosis attacked her knees, restricting her to crutches for months. Something like this mainly happened in the case of exposure to a potent toxin. The county health department called in California's Department of Health and Human Services, which put 2 scientists, Drs. Osorio and Waller, on the case. After interviews with staff, they found that the people who had developed severe symptoms tended to have certain things in common. First, those who worked more closely to Ramirez, at least within 2 feet, were mostly affected. Second, women tended to be more affected than men in this case, and they all had normal blood tests after the exposure. A subsequent investigation was done of the hospital room by a hazmat team. The team searched the ER for any signs of poison gas, toxins, or other foreign substances, but didn't find anything that could suggest how the medical staff fainted. Additionally, autopsy reports of Ramirez's body proved inconclusive. A main theory at first, pushed especially by the media, was that this had to be a case of mass hysteria, perhaps triggered by the odor. This could have happened as a result of stress and anxiety at the hospital that night. For obvious reasons, this claim infuriated most of those who experienced symptoms, most especially Gorchinsky, who had the most severe case. They all reiterated that they were seasoned healthcare professionals, and multiple people do not become hospitalized for days off of imagined symptoms. A federal research facility in Livermore, California was asked to take part in looking at Ramirez's toxicology and autopsy reports. They had found chemicals in Ramirez's blood that night, but none were actually toxic enough to produce the symptoms as experienced by staff that particular night. There were different drugs in her system such as lidocaine, Tylenol, codeine, and Tigan, possibly used to alleviate pain symptoms from her illness. Livermore Labs eventually postulated that Ramirez had been using dimethyl sulfoxide, or DMSO, a solvent used as a powerful degreaser as a home remedy for pain. Users of the substance also report that it has a garlic-like taste, which may explain the odor from before. The researchers theorized that the DMSO in Ramirez's system might have built up owing to urinary blockage caused by her kidney failure. Oxygen given to her in the ER would have combined with the DMSO to form dimethylsulfone, which is known to crystallize at room temperature, and crystals were observed in some Ramirez's drawn blood. Dimethylsulfone, or DMSO2 on its own, is not especially dangerous, and where it gets tricky is wondering how the symptoms were caused in staff. It's possible that electric shocks administered during emergency defibrillation could have then converted the DMSO2 into dimethyl sulfate, or DMSO4, somehow, exposure to which could have caused some of the reported symptoms of the emergency department staff. Because of the volatility of the chemical, the DMSO4 evaporates without a trace, leading to it not showing up in early reports. But again, this is inconclusive, especially given the conversion of DMSO2 to DMSO4 via electric shocks is a weak link in the theory. Another slightly more conspiratorial theory, as reported by the Los Angeles weekly New Times, said that the hospital where the incident occurred may have been the site of a secret underground illegal manufacturing lab used to make the drug methamphetamine. In stories appearing in the 1997 issues, staff writer for the New Times, Susan Goldsmith, reports that meth chemicals may have been smuggled out of the hospital in IV bags, one of which was inadvertently hooked up to the dying Ramirez. This triggered the round of nausea, headaches, and other symptoms that put 6 ER workers in the hospital. This might also call to mind the accusations of hospital cover-up, but a secret meth lab in a major hospital sounds possibly too complicated to work. To this day, there's not a definitive explanation for what happened to Gloria Ramirez and the staff workers that night. In an aftermath of the incident, her relatives accused officials of bungling the investigation and concealing unsafe conditions at Riverside General Hospital. Maggie Ramirez Garcia, the sister of Gloria, said, "I honestly believe my sister may have lived if she hadn't gone into that emergency room that night. I don't know what they're afraid of, but we want answers." Well, that's it for this more scientific episode of Night Files. If you enjoyed this case and have any thoughts on the case below, please share them down in the comment section below. Otherwise, this should be the last episode of the semester, but I hope to see you all again in the summer. I'm going to take a good break and sign off. See you all next time.